Recording. There you go.
Welcome to our session, Easy Desmos Lessons for ELL. We're really glad you're here. Can go on to the next slide. Today we want to just give you a really quick introduction to Desmos. You may know it already for math activities, but if you mostly teach ELL classes, maybe you have not experienced it yet. So we'll let you experience it as a learner. We'll make sure you know how to create a Desmos teacher account. And then Chris, who is really a genius with this platform, is going to take you through some templates that she has created for common learning task formats. You'll learn how to create a copy and edit the templates, and you'll learn how to edit and assign lessons for your ELL classes. I'm Elizabeth Bennett, by the way. I am the digital learning specialist at Literacy Minnesota. And Chris Class teaches, well, I'll just let you tell.
Yeah. My name is Chris Klass. I teach at the Hub Center. I do both ELL classes and the GED science class, or at least I have the last several years. And my pronouns are they, them.
So we will put a link in the chat in just a moment to a Padlet. This is a slide very similar to what Chris uses in their classes. Usually like right at the beginning of class as learners are entering the online class. They'll have these directions up and they go to Google Classroom, the learners, but for today we will go to the Padlet. And you'll go to our example lesson. Chris's learners always sign in with Google. They all have Google accounts. For the purposes of this session, it doesn't really matter. You can sign in with Google, or you can just click, there's an option that says continue without signing in. So I'll put that Padlet link.
I've got it.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Yep.
And we'll give you about 3 to 4 minutes to just kind of play around as a student, get a feel for what this is like.
Elizabeth, did you want me to also open up the dashboard on this?
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Okay. Now that the Padlet link is in there, I'm going to go ahead and do that while people are still logging in, but the instructions are in the Padlet. So if you got it open, you can look there. I'm gonna actually go from my Desmos account here. Just give me a sec. And are you seeing the dashboard, Elizabeth? Perfect. Looks like we have 47 participants in the call, but only 21 people in the Desmos lesson so far.
So in the Padlet, people should click on the today's example lesson in the upper left-hand corner. Is that right?
Yes, yep,
Okay.
exactly right.
So again,
And-
that's in the top left corner, today's example lesson. It's a black box after you click on that Padlet link in the chat.
And again, this link is kind of to replicate the learner experience. You can post a link to your Desmos activity in Google Classroom or whatever learning management system you're using, or an email or a WhatsApp message or whatever you're using to communicate with your learners, and they will access that link and then get to your activity.
And then what I'm sharing is the teacher dashboard, which is what you can be watching while your learners are working, which is how we're gauging how many people are already in there. And you can also see, if you come back to Zoom after you've played around with it, lots of people are still on page 1. There's a next button to go on to other pages if you want to. Some people have made it all the way through the 4 pages. Things like that.
So I see a couple questions in the chat. Tracy is asking, is this mainly for use in a virtual classroom? That is how I have used it, and that's how I think Chris uses it in online or HyFlex classes. But I think you could use it in in-person classes as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then Linnea asked, how do you submit after doing the last page? And your learners don't have to submit anything. It's kind of magical. The teacher can see everything that all of the learners have done in real time.
Yeah, to build on that, so right now, what I'm showing in Zoom is what's called the summary page. And so that's how I can see how many people are on each page and where they're at. The little circles show that a person has worked on that particular page. Where it's grayed out shows that they haven't done any work on that page. But I can switch to this teacher tab and I can actually see individual participants' work. And like Elizabeth said, they don't have to click submit. Just as they're working, I can watch what they're doing and redirect or give clarifying instructions, that type of thing as they work. Anything else we need to highlight here, Elizabeth?
I think we can move on at this point. This is on the Padlet, so you can access it later.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to come back to our slides then. And like Elizabeth said, there's going to be like a lot of information coming at you throughout this presentation, but it's all in the Padlet for you to come back to.
So now that you've had a chance to experience this as a learner, we're going to make sure that you have a teacher account because that's what you'll need to make copies of the templates and then personalize them for your classes. So it's pretty straightforward. You're going to go to teacher.desmos.com, click that button that says create your free teacher account, and then log in with Google. This time you really do want to log in with Google so that everything is going to be saved for you and it's really easy just to get back to everything in the future. And then be sure to click back to Zoom so you can continue along with the rest of the presentation.
Since I don't see the chat, just let me know when you think enough people are ready to move on to the next step.
Yeah, maybe you can just type okay in the chat if you're ready to continue. Kayla has a question about Padlet. Do you find Padlet difficult for level A ELL students? So like probably level 1, very beginning. I actually have not used Padlet a whole lot with learners, but I do think compared to Google Classroom, it would actually probably be easier than Google Classroom.
Yeah, when I was teaching level A learners online, I would put links that I wanted them to access into the chat. So that was a priority thing for my learners to know how to do, which open the chat and click a link. So if they can do that, I think Padlet is a really visual way to organize information. So it seems like it would be accessible, and they don't have to log in like they would for Google Classroom.
Oh, and Kayla is saying actually they already use Google Classroom.
Oh.
So then yeah, if they can handle Google Classroom, I don't think there's any need to create yet another place for them to go.
Yeah, just put it in Google Classroom. We're only doing that in this scenario because we don't want to have to make you all join a Google Classroom just to click a link. We're just putting it in the Padlet for that reason.
Yeah, and Danielle adds the lower levels in her program use Padlet as their classroom homepages, so kind of as an alternative to Google Classroom or another LMS.
Well, what do you think, Elizabeth? How's the chat looking? Does it seem like people have their accounts made? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of okays. I think
Okay.
I'll hand it over to you.
Let's keep moving then. So the first thing that we're going to do is take a tour of the templates that I have made. Desmos is a super flexible tool and it's really customizable, but what I find when I tell people that is that they don't know where to start. It's overwhelming. So what we did is make a short collection of some templates that I think are pretty similar to really common learning task formats that you're probably already using in your classroom. And then we just want to show you how to edit them so that you can use them with your specific texts and vocabulary lists, et cetera, et cetera. So these templates, again, are in that Padlet. This time they're in the center column. But I'm going to click through them from here and we'll take a look at them. This is going to be kind of an info dump session. So it's recorded. So if you need to come back and watch it again later because you missed something because you were clicking links, that's fine. But also feel free to just follow along. So the first one we're going to take a look at is this phonics practice template. And I am going to just do this from the preview. These are templates, so they're blank. And I'm just going to talk through what the different components are. And then after we've looked at the templates, I'm going to show you how you would edit those templates in Activity Builder. So taking a look, this is the phonics lesson template. And this first one I did use in an ELL A level class. And this is hopefully a very familiar type of activity where maybe in an in-person class, you give students a chip or some sort of game piece or something, and one of these types of tables with 3 boxes, and they are supposed to identify where in the word a sound or a morpheme appears, beginning, middle, or end. So I might say cat, where's the k sound? Put your chip where the k is in the word cat. And students are going to move that chip to indicate that. When I showed you the dashboard earlier, I could see individual students' work who are signed in. So I can see if everybody's got their dot in the right box or not. And I can also do what's called an overlay. And so I can kind of get a picture of the class as a whole. Does most everybody have their dot in that first box, or are they kind of all over the place. Something else I'll point out here is the teacher moves are not visible for students, but they are visible for you while you're using these lessons. And so in preparing all these templates, I put descriptions of how I use these and how you might edit them for your use. Again, this is only 45 minutes, we gotta move fast. So I wanna make sure that you have this information when you're trying to use these later on. I linked the BAT here, which has lots of activities you could use, and then how to play with this. The next screen is familiar to you if you've used any kind of Orton-Gillingham or Wilson method, again, in connection maybe with the BAT. And there's more of these beginning, middle, ending sound boxes. And this component is called a graph. Again, I'll show you how to use a graph component later. And these are individual points that students can drag and drop into the boxes. Over here, I've got some digraphs. I say the word, they sound it out. They show me what's at the beginning, middle, and end and spell the word. I can watch the whole group or I can watch individuals. And down here is some information about how to edit that if you want more letters or delete some of these letters. This is the whole alphabet plus some digraphs. Maybe that's too much for your learners. For this template in particular, there are a lot of points on this graph, so it sometimes is slow for people on mobile devices. So I just say, be patient, it'll work, just take your time. This is an example where I've added some more. Maybe this is further down the line. Now we've got some blends, we've got the fizzle rule in here, things like that. So again, you can add or take away. And I also want to point out this little icon over here to copy the whole screen. So later when we're going through Activity Builder, if you want this, but you don't want it in a different lesson, you don't want this whole template, you can just copy this screen and put it into your lesson. And then the last one here, this is called a table component. I'll go over that in a little bit. And I use this for a self-checking spelling test for students when we get to the end of the phonics lesson. Down here in the teacher moves is how you can edit it so that it will check the spelling list you want them to practice, not the one I coded it for. And you can see the first word is father. So if they spell it correctly, they get a green check. And again, I can keep an eye on the whole class or individuals. All right, this is a quick run through. I'm going to go to the vocabulary template next. And this one will look kind of familiar because it's what Elizabeth used for that lesson you did at the beginning. Here I have this intentionally left blank area. This is an image component. So Elizabeth put that picture of the vegetables in this spot. It's already in there for you in the template. So you just upload your image. And then over here, here's another example of using a table, this time for students to type the words in. Desmos automatically bolds the first row, so I always like to make that my example because the answer is going to be in bold anyways. Here's what I use for breakout rooms, and obviously this one's super flexible, so you don't need to just use it in the vocabulary template. You can hit that copy this screen and put it other places, but I have a note component here for you to put the instructions or the questions and prompts for the breakout room, and then maybe some examples for students as well. And then the last one is a writing prompt. Again, it's just a note component here at the top for the instructions or the prompt. And then this down here is what's called a free response component. And you can see actually there's a place for students to upload images, audio, or this is math because Desmos is designed for math instruction, but they just type into this box. I usually use it for that. I always like the fact that they could submit responses in other ways, but I haven't played around a ton with it. You can see there's also this share with class button after they type. You can turn this off, but I kind of like it for things. I use it for my warm up every day. And when they hit that share with class button, then they get to see what other people in the class have written as well. All right, on to the reading template. So you can see this one is a little bit longer, but most of the components in here we've already kind of gone over. So I'm just going to go through it quickly. Another intentionally left blank. This is just a media component. I usually put a screenshot here of the reading skill that we're working on. Our book that we use for our curriculum is electronic, so I can just throw screenshots in here easily, or you could change it to a note component. And then there's space for you to put a question and something for students to practice with a free response box. Here I put the article. Again, I put it as a screenshot. You could definitely change it to a note and type the text that you want them to use. I like the screenshot here because it has an allow full screen option, so they can make it a little bit bigger on their screens. And then I have it again here, but this is what's called a sketch component. So this one's a new one that I want to highlight. You can see over here, there's a pencil and an eraser tool. It doesn't get as big as the previous page, which is why I have it in here twice. But now they can annotate the text. They can underline things, which is what I often have my students do with words that they don't know. You can also, and I'll show you this later, add other tools in the sketch component if you want them to like write a question or a reaction to a text, things like that. I have some multiple choice questions in here. And again, this area over here is a screenshot of the text, but they can click allow full screen. You know, this, otherwise the question kind of takes up some space on their screen, which is limited on a mobile device. So I like that allow full screen option. And then here's a place for you to put in multiple choice questions or practice. And it does check. So from the teacher dashboard, you can see a check mark if they've gotten the answer correct, and an X if not. But it doesn't tell the students whether they got it right or not. So we still kind of go over it as a group. This one is how I have done some citing evidence practice. It's another table component. And so I type the questions in the first column. Students can answer the questions and then cite their evidence. In the third column, our texts are all numbered every 5 lines, so they can kind of tell me where in the text they found the answers. And then another breakout room component. And this is another thing that's the beauty of using a template is I only had to make this slide once. I just changed the text. I copy it and then change the text. And another writing component. And then our last one is a writing lesson plan template. And again, most of these we've kind of already gone over. This page, I put a model or an example of some writing. I do it as a screenshot, so it's a media component, but you could do it in a note. Here I have 2 spaces, one for the text and one for a writing skill screenshot, and places for students to practice, like some practice questions and answer space. Another breakout room, I like to have students talk about what they're about to write to kind of bring that oral language to the forefront. So I always have a breakout room before they start their pre-writing. And then here's an example of using that table component for an outline. So if you're doing like a sequencing type of writing a process, maybe it's introduction, step 1, step 2, step 3, or maybe it's the first box is introduction, supporting detail, conclusion. So you label the parts of the outline over here, and students can fill in the boxes over on the right. I also have in these teacher moves how to use a sketch component instead and put a graphic organizer in the background. I've done that with Venn diagrams, for example, and then students can put things and move it around the Venn diagram. And then this last page has a lot of components to it, but that's because I like them to have the writing skill and writing model available while they're writing. And then if I had typed notes in my outline boxes, when I get to the next page, those notes are available for me to reference while I'm typing in the free response box. So I like students to have everything in front of them that they're referencing to try to do their writing. Again, we kind of talked about this. Students can hit the submit button, but I can see it before they've hit the submit button. And after they hit it, they can still hit edit my response and go back and do some revision work, which is great. That gives me time while everybody's working to give students personalized feedback. And then also the next page is a breakout room where they do some peer editing. So I've given you the steps of the instructions, how I write it, and space for a writing checklist. Down here at the bottom, I give them a nice long breakout room, and this is a regular routine that we have in my classroom where they read the checklist together. I update it each time for whatever grammar or sentence type or whatever that we're focusing on. They know how to share their screen, and this video over here is a prompt to help them remember if they can't remember how to do it. Of course, it's in Google Meet because that's what we use, so you could change that out. And then go through the writing checklist, revise their writing together, and then move on to the next person. And this buys me more time to give people personalized feedback, as well as picking a couple of sample writing sentences or paragraphs that I want to highlight with the whole group. Maybe this is something everybody's struggling on, that type of thing. Okay. So that was a very quick and dirty run through the 4 templates. Are there any questions we need to address right now, or time for that, Elizabeth? Or should we keep moving?
Yeah, Liddy asked, how is the user experience for learners if they're using phones?
Yeah. Obviously the screen is smaller. And Desmos gives you a mobile warning right away, and it will say small screen warning, and I just have them click OK. And these templates that I use, I've scaled them down so that they fit pretty well on a phone. And the big difference I've noticed is that it orients it up and down if they're on a cell phone. So to see the multiple different components, they just need to be able to scroll. But students, for the most part, have a good user experience on mobile, which is one of the reasons why I've landed with Desmos. They don't need to download an app, and it still works pretty well. Every once in a while, I have a student who has trouble using the sketch function, but it's usually a small enough number that I can say, okay, the other 29 of you be working in Desmos. If it's not working for you, you can put your answers in the chat. And then I only have to pay attention to one person's thing in the chat instead of trying to keep track of who's done what, and it's all, yeah, confusing. Okay. Let's go ahead and go on to this next section then. Again, you can go back to these templates anytime. So if you like these templates and you want to use them, how are you going to do that? You need to be able to create a copy, your own copy, and edit it. So in order to do that, once you have those open from the links we just looked at, there is and now I'm going to put on my little laser pointer here. There's a circle with 3 dots icon up in the right-hand corner. And I'm logged in now, right? Because I want to make sure that the copy that I'm making is saved. And I can hit this copy and edit button. And so it opens a copy for you. And you can keep track of it because it'll say copy of blah, blah, blah. But feel free to change the title. You can click that and change the title to whatever's useful for you. Here you can see those screens that I just took you through, and the components are already there. So this is one of those image components that I talked about. Once you've gone through and added your images, your text, you can add more screens if you need to. you hit publish. And I'll show you how to actually launch the lesson after we go through more of the activity builder and how to edit these components. But yeah, this is how you'll get that template and then use it. So now let's take a look at the activity builder. Like I said, you can take my templates and edit them, or you could make your own from scratch and just take particular screens that you liked. So again, logged in as a teacher. Over here is custom activities. This would be if you wanted to make a lesson completely from scratch. And when you click on that, you'll see this create new activity button. And here's where you can name it, change the sharing settings. I think it's so nice how shareable Desmos is, so you can share with other teachers in your program. Add any activity description that you want, what unit it's for, or what CCRS you're covering, that type of thing. And then here you go. Here's your blank activity builder. Again, you can change the title here, add more screens. And then there are tons of components over here. I'm not going to go over all of them. We don't have time. I'm just going to highlight the ones that we've talked about so far today. And that's notes, sketch, table, free response, media, and graph. The notes component, you can click and just kind of drag it where you want it. And this is what I'm using for student instructions. You could use it for a text if you wanted to, that type of thing. You can see there's some basic formatting tools and things like that for you. And again, if you want to, you spend all kinds of time getting your instructions or your text ready and you want to have it on the next page, hit the copy button and paste it onto the next screen. The next one that I talked about is the sketch component. So you have three choices of background, graph background, this blank one, or custom image. And I use the custom image a lot. So maybe I have a fill in the blank activity that I have a screenshot of, or that Venn diagram that I talked about earlier. You can put that in the background, and then you can also, I talked earlier about changing the tools. So if I just want them to annotate a text, I'm probably only going to check pencil and I'll uncheck the rest of these tools. But if I also want them to be able to like write, annotate, then I'll also turn on the text tool, for instance. You'll just want to make sure students know how to change back and forth between those tools. Next up is the table component. That one's down here. You can see it automatically comes with 2 columns. You can add more rows like this. This little drop-down menu lets you insert more columns. And you do want to pay attention to making sure you click format as text. I think it defaults to format as math for students to write answers to problems or things like in a T-table, that kind of thing. So something to note. And I think I put that in the teacher moves. Next is free response. This is the component where students have the choice of typing an answer, uploading an image, or audio. And so I use this for like writing prompts and review questions, things like that. And here's where you can uncheck show students their classmates' responses if you don't want to use that. The media component is how I add those screenshots, as well as the video that I showed you. If you're savvy and you know how to download videos from YouTube, for example, or if you have videos that come with your curriculum, you can add those here. Audio is a little bit trickier. You just need to make sure that you have like a still image with the audio in the background, and then you upload it as a video file, but I've done that as well. And over here, these 3 dots, is where you'll find the allow full screen if you want students to be able to make the video or the image bigger, especially on mobile devices. And then the last thing we want to take a look at is the graph component. So again, we said this is designed for math teachers. So when you add a graph component, it's going to look like this. But if you click that edit graph, just right in the middle of the component that you added, it gives you the option to play around with how it looks. So this little wrench over here, you can get rid of the grid and the X and Y axis, and then you just have a blank page to work with, like what I showed you with that Orton Gillingham, the phonics board activity. Now it's blank, right? And then over here, this plus allows you to add things onto the graph. So the chip, that red circle that I used, and those 3 box boards that we had, those were images that I added. And then all of those letters, digraphs, etc., those were actually expressions. So you're going to make a point on your graph. And I always just do parentheses 0, 0, close parentheses as my point. But once you do that, you can label it. And so that's how I got the letters instead of a point. You can make it draggable so students can move it around the board. You can change the color. So, you know, my vowels were red, my consonants were blue. I made the digraphs and so on, different colors, things like that. Okay, how are we doing, Elizabeth? Do we need to pause for questions or keep going?
We've got Danielle has a question. How did you make the student responses from the previous page auto-populate onto the next page?
Yes. So in the table component, I've done a little bit of coding, and that's done for you. If you're using my template, it will do that. But I did write a little bit about how to code that, so it will do that. And then we also have some links later. So if you want to get into the coding side of Desmos, you can do that. But it does require some coding to get that part working, which again is why these templates are nice, because it's already there. Okay, so to launch a lesson, once you've copied and edited the template and hit that publish button, now you want to use it with your students. So here again is that activity page. There's an assign button. And I always use the single session code. Assign to your classes works if your students are in a Google Classroom, you've connected your Google Classroom, and they share the same G Suite account with you, which ours don't. They're using their personal Gmail. So I just don't mess with it. I use single session code. And when you do that, you'll get this screen. Again, I don't mess with the security settings. I do usually make it 2 weeks. Because then if students miss class, they can come back and take a look at what you did that day, or if I have some students who want to go back and review what we went over. The 1 year option, nobody's coming back a whole year later to see what they did in class. So I just use the 2 weeks. And then I hit the create invite code. And then you'll see this on your page. Here's the code, if you want to do it that way. Here's that dashboard that Elizabeth and I were showing you earlier. We were seeing who is signed in and where they are. That's how you'll get there. And then this 3-dot icon allows you to grab the student link and pause the session. I pause the session until I am ready to open it, because every once in a while I forget and accidentally post it on the wrong day of the week. And then students open it and get started and they don't know what to do because we're not in class. So I like the pause the session feature. When you click student link, this pops up. I think some teachers project this. And I think it's too wordy. There's too much unnecessary information. So what I do is I just grab I hit the copy button, grab this link, and put that in my Google Classroom, which is what we were kind of talking about earlier. And you can also change the date if you need more than 2 weeks. Is this me or is this you?
I can talk about it. Yeah, it's just we're just directing you back to that Padlet again. In the activity builder column, there is a series of articles starting from, beginning to very advanced if you want to go into that computation layer and start doing a lot of more advanced things.
Yeah, the stuff I talked about, there's tons and tons of free stuff. The advanced stuff is this down here. And then I wrote an article for EdTech about how I do this. So this is another place where if after this session you're like, oh, I don't remember, you can reference the article as well.
So thank you so much. We have just 4 minutes left, but Chris and I are happy to take any questions. And of course, you have our contact information and the Padlet and the slides to go back to.
Are there other questions popping up in the chat?
Some thank yous. Oh, Danielle asks, after I make copies, how can I put them all into a collection?
Yes, great. So let me come over here. For instance, we use this writing task template today. I'm going to copy it. I hit publish after I made all my edits. Now I have my own copy, right? And maybe I change the name or whatever. There is this plus sign over here. If you haven't used Desmos before, you probably don't have any collections. So you could add a new collection. I made a collection for this Summer Institute session that we're doing. So I'm just gonna click on that and then it's gonna add it to that collection. So over here is where all my collections are. You can see I've got all sorts of things that I've saved. And when I click on that, now all the things that we've done together today are in one spot, which is really nice. I teach multiple different classes, and so I have collections for each of them. You can also nest collections. So for instance, for my ELLB class, each unit is its own collection, but then those collections are in a collection so that I can quickly navigate through. Otherwise, you have to scroll through every lesson for the entire year, get to the bottom by May. So I like this better.
Yeah, the publishing is a little confusing. I had that issue too, Danielle. But nothing really happens when you publish it. You can still go back and edit, and it's not really visible to your learners unless you create a session link and give it to them.
Yeah, I think the thing to note, because obviously all of us make mistakes occasionally, is if you've hit publish and assigned a lesson, and then you go back and make a change, that link that you made doesn't have the changes that you made. So you'll want to make a new link and launch that if you catch your typo in time, which I don't always, but hopefully you will.
Yeah, Heather says, I think of publish as save. Yeah, I think that's a good way to think of it. I agree, Danielle. It is pretty incredible that this is a free platform for teachers.
I hope it always stays that way. There is so much capacity within Desmos. It's completely free. It's unlimited because you can get into the coding stuff and then just it's wild. So yeah, may it always be free and available for us.
All right, and we are at 2 o'clock. So thank you so much for attending. We'd love to hear how you're using Desmos in your ELL classes going forward.
And
Yes.
feel free to email questions. We've got our emails up here, so yeah.
Okay, and remember that our next thing is the coffee break. So you can go to the coffee break link and just have a chat with some people. We'll be back with the 4th session at 2:45, I believe. 2:45. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.